Allison, welcome to the Modern People Leader. This is like what, 2.5 years in the making. We were supposed to have you on a while back,
Yeah.
and then we had to reschedule, and then just got lost in the shuffle. So I'm so glad that you're here. How you doing
Yeah.
today?
Happy to be here. I'm doing well.
Happy Friday. I mean,
Happy Friday to you as well.
no,
We made it, guys.
yeah,
We
we
made
always
it.
say this. It's always that this is always the best way to close out our week. So I'm excited for today's chat.
Likewise.
All right, shall we get into good news stories?
Sure.
You want to kick us off?
So I guess I will think more on the personal side since I'm currently interviewing for my next opportunity, but very excited to be getting married this year, and
Ooh.
we're going to be sending out the wedding invites next week. So yeah, that's my good news.
Do you have a wedding planner, or are you
We
doing most
do.
of the planning?
We definitely have a wedding planner, and she's been great. It was definitely necessary because we're getting married out of state. And so, as it turns out, I don't know too many vendors in the Knoxville, Tennessee area, and she does. So, she's been a blessing to work with.
That's awesome. I'm excited for you. And I guess I can go next. Let's see. I'm gonna steal Steven's good news from, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but it was the first weekend where he had nothing on his agenda. And that's the case for me and my wife this weekend. We've been like, traveling nonstop. We were in Vegas this week. We were in Mexico City, I guess like the week prior. We were in Mexico City again 3 weeks prior to that. And then I was in Vegas like a month ago for another conference. It's like nonstop. And it can get a little bit exhausting. So I'm just really excited to sort of just veg out and do nothing this weekend.
Well, A, you're cheeky for taking my good news from a couple weeks ago, but B, that's awesome because you guys have been all over the place doing all the things. So that leaves me my good news story. So my oldest daughter is 13 and her name's Astrid. And she's like the sporty spice of our family. So she's the athlete, and my youngest daughter is kind of the studious one. And so my daughter had her first semester of track, and she did quite well. So she runs the relays and she does long jump, but she was a little bummed out like that there's clearly a tier of like the top people, and she's like at the top of like the second tier, and she's like, I just don't know why they run so much faster and they jump so much further. And so a friend of mine is an elite sports trainer, and we're having our first session with him tomorrow. So my friend's name is
Cool.
Tim, and yeah, he's invited us to come out to the collective. And so I don't know who's gonna hurt worse. Well, I know who's gonna hurt worse. It will be me. Astrid's gonna be like, this is so cool,
Oh,
and
so you're
I'm gonna
you're doing
be
it too.
You're
I'm
gonna
doing it
do.
too. Yeah,
Oh
that was
man.
Tim's deal. Was like, hey, I don't think your daughter's the only one that would benefit from some training.
Just politely sliding that in
Yeah,
there.
grimacing look directly at me. I was like, okay, bro, I hear you. I'm in. So we'll see. That could be good news or bad news. I don't know, but I'm looking forward to that tomorrow.
All
That kind
right,
of
Al.
reminds me, I don't know if you've seen the Disney movie Chang Can Dunk. Definitely
No.
recommend. I watch a good amount of like Disney Plus these days, and it's
Chang can dunk.
yeah, Chang Can Dunk, and it's
Okay.
about this kid in high school who's in the marching band who makes a bet that he can make a slam dunk, and he's not particularly athletic, but trains his way up to, spoiler alert, make a dunk.
Very cool. Very
Steven, are
cool.
you going to be dunking here in a couple of
I,
months?
the crazy thing is one of Tim's specialties, and I feel like this is a commercial for Tim. So this is not we're not endorsing the Collective Inc., although they're a very cool gym in Austin, Texas, and Tim Riley, my trainer. So Tim's specialty is jumping. And if you go to, he's like, I don't know, 6'2", and he's built like a linebacker. And in his Instagram stories, like he'll show like the effects, the positive effects of this training program that he does specifically for jumping. And it's him dunking, doing all these crazy dunks. It's like, this is insane. So I don't know if I'll be dunking, but maybe Astrid. Maybe
I
Astrid could get there someday.
I went and checked out his Instagram, and you're right. He's like not super tall, and he's dunking from like a foot inside of the free throw line. I'm like, wow, this
Yeah.
guy's got some hops.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But we'll put the movie
Astrid can
on our,
dunk.
yeah.
Heard it here
Astrid.
first.
I like it. I like it.
Well, Allison, we always like to dive into the stories of our guests that we bring on. So give us like the, I don't know, 5-10 minute version of your career story. I know that's a tall task, but I think
Sure.
Stephen, what do you like to call this? The Brene Brown portion of our interview? Like tell us
Tell
your
us your
story.
story.
Yeah,
Tell
yeah,
us your
yeah. So
story.
so yeah, tell us
What are you
tell us your
about?
story, Allison.
Yeah. So despite being on the Modern People Leader, my first job was not actually in anything HRy, as it turns out. I sold educational books and software door to door, which had me build up a lot of grit, I think, and prepared me well for startups. However, in terms of general day-to-day satisfaction, I would give it a 0 out of 10. Do not recommend. You have to be extremely resilient. And so I actually did so well my first year, though. Out of 3,000 first year sales reps, I was in the top 50. And so they invited me back to actually recruit my own team. So that was my first little taste of getting into something more HR focused and talent acquisition there. But like I just mentioned, it was, while I was good at it, it wasn't something I particularly enjoyed. And so made a pretty big pivot to go and teach English to kids between the ages of 3 to 18 in Beijing. My degree, for reference, is in Italian and business, but I had minored in Mandarin and thought at the time it would be really cool to get paid to talk to people. So I always thought, I was like, oh, I should be a talk show host as a kid. And then I learned that you can get paid to talk to people by recruiting. And so eventually, after my first year of teaching, while I actually did really fall in love with the profession, one of my peers had said that there was a recruiter opening recruiting teachers with our company. And I thought, that sounds like a good use of my skill set. So I applied for the job, I got it, and he ended up doing very well for himself too, just moving his way up to become a regional educational director with the company. And that was my first real full step into a 100% HR role. And I had to relocate to Shanghai for that position, since that's where the company's Asian headquarters is based. And after my first year there, actually moved back to the US. I'm originally from Florida, and unfortunately, my grandmother was diagnosed with pretty severe dementia at the time. And so wanted to be back stateside while she could still remember me. And I was able to do that, thankfully, with my company. They created the job for me here in the US, and I also got promoted. So had the opportunity to travel to a lot of global hubs to help standardize international recruiting practices. So that was pretty phenomenal with EF. Still a huge fan of theirs. But as it turns out, international teacher recruiting is a pretty niche thing to do in the great wide world of HR. Right. So I decided to move on from them and jump in feet first to a staffing agency where I got to recruit on all perm roles except for those in the technical discipline. So one day I'd be working with accounting and finance professionals. The next day it would be more marketing and sales. And then I'd go for HR folks just to get some variety in there. But I really found that, once again, while my sales experience and resilience from the sales background was very helpful and I was successful in an agency perspective, I really missed being a cultural ambassador for a company. And so that's definitely one very strong thing about my former employer of EF Education First. They just have this truly world-class, phenomenal culture that still obviously stays with me to this day, even though it's been probably 7 or 8 years since I've worked there at this point. And so I knew that I wanted to find a company again that I could just really be a true evangelist for. So after having this revelation, I went to go and work at Cengage, another very education-oriented company in the ed tech space. And another really great opportunity there, did full cycle talent acquisition for them, both student recruiting as well as contingency staffing across their, at the time, 10 nationwide offices. I'm not sure if they still have 10. And although I really enjoyed my work there, I found myself more often than not wanting to do more. And so, although it was the right mission, it wasn't necessarily the right scale. So at that point, I made a pivot into startups where I went to Cozykin. Cozykin was a seed funded startup. When I joined, I was hired 25 as their head of care recruitment. And they really were able to capitalize on my high volume recruiting experiences with the teachers from EF. And at Cozykin, we used data analytics to match families together to share a Montessori trained early childhood educator. And so there I was really brought on to focus on that high volume recruiting of the early childhood educators. But after hitting a really lofty recruiting goal about 7 weeks in, they said, "Hey, do you want to just be our head of people?" And I said, "Why, yes, that actually is my career goal." So very definitionally, like when you hear the HR professionals like who fell into HR, it's me. Hi, I'm the HR leader. It's me. Really got to flex the muscles outside of talent acquisition at that point. And we ended up growing to just shy of 200 in 11 months there. It was an absolutely wild ride and loved working with so many phenomenal parents in the greater Boston and New York City markets. But unfortunately, the profit margins just weren't quite there. As it turns out, in a lot of the childcare industry, just the margins are razor thin. And so we weren't quite able to work out the unit economics before the runway ran out. And so we ended up having to close up shop, and eventually were able to have the proprietary software associated with the company acquired by Higher Ground Education. Then from there, as I was actually on LinkedIn doing my thing, helping folks from Cozykin get their next job, ConnectRN's now CEO reached out to me about leading their people and talent team. So I then went to join ConnectRN, which has an app that connects nurses and aides across the United States to each other in a psychologically safe community, to professional development opportunities, and then also to shift-based work in skilled nursing facilities, home health, and most recently hospital settings. And so had a really phenomenal 3.5 years there recently, was able to go from being a team of 1 up to a department of 15 at its largest, where I was overseeing, no shocks here, talent acquisition, people and culture, total rewards, and learning and development. But yeah, now I am on the hunt for my next opportunity in the people and talent space. And so, well, I think we've got some questions lined up to get a little bit more into that here shortly.
Wow, what a journey. And so, I have so many questions, but before we go in there, I have like a very nostalgic feeling with this particular interview and conversation, and I find that I get that feeling anytime I interact with or reconnect with people from the Boston HR community, because I think that's how
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
ultimately that's what led to us originally trying to schedule a show. We didn't quite make it happen. And so I just want to say I'm so stoked that we finally are making this happen. And it just feels so awesome and natural. So shout out to Boston HR Council, I think is that a thing? Yeah. Okay.
It definitely is a thing. Yes.
Okay, cool. And so I love your story, and I love the accidental HR group cohort of guests that we've had. I fall into the accidental HR bucket, and I've spent a lifetime in the space, and I'm not in a transition period now, but I can see a future where I might be. And so this is just really super relevant, super timely, I think, for a lot of people. And so I'm just curious, like, what is, before we get into the detailed questions, like, what are you taking some time off? Have you been getting some R&R in? Because those are, the startup life is not for everyone, and man, is it a grind? And
Oh yeah.
so how, like, what were your immediate priorities when you realized, like, okay, like, my chapter here is closing, my new one is going to start at some point? Like, what were the immediate things that you thought of?
Yeah. So much
Besides
to
wedding planning, because it sounds
yes.
like that's a part of it also.
Yes, that was definitely still priority number one. But so much to my parents' chagrin, my dad also happens to be a certified financial planner. I wanted to travel. So he was like, "Are you out of your mind? You want to travel right now and you don't have any income coming in?" I was like, "Well, this is the first time that I've actually had an extended period of time to be able to do this in so many years." And one of my personal life goals is to go to as many countries as my age. And I'm obviously not going to share my age, but I will say that I am a good bit behind that goal right now just because of COVID, right? And also trying to be a responsible adult, planning for all of the expenses that come with a wedding, which are way too many. So yeah, ultimately I for the first, couple weeks, I dove right into the job search, and thankfully I was able to say to them up front, "Hey, I've got this trip planned." I actually took 2 trips. I got a good sized tax refund, so that funded a 7-day cruise. And then I had several months ago already pre-planned my bachelorette party for the end of March, early April. So then I had that thankfully to look forward to as well. So yeah, definitely have had a good amount of time to R&R. But it's, in the kind of classic startup mantra, now I'm starting to get antsy because I'm used to doing 20 million things and wearing so many hats. And right now it's just like, well, we've reached the part of the wedding planning process where you just got to wait for the RSVPs, right? And so I'm just like, what do I do with myself? So I've done a little bit of volunteering, going to different networking events. But I do think that it is really important to take some time and just decompress, especially those coming from hypergrowth startups, because the likelihood is that you probably haven't had a proper chance to unplug. And I don't know about you all, but like this is the longest stint I've ever personally been without work. It's now been 8 weeks. And so even transitioning from Cozykin to Connect RN, I think I took like a half of a week before
Wow.
jumping into my next startup. I was like, oh yeah, I should probably like go and see my optometrist. And then once I've got, the contacts and glasses figured out, I'll be able to see the laptop so I can just go back to work, right? That's how that works. Uh,
Yeah.
but it's important to take that time.
One of my biggest regrets, I've only worked at a handful of places in my career. So I have like loyalty. I'm high on the loyalty spectrum when it comes to work, probably generational. I don't know, maybe cultural also. And so but I was like, it was ingrained in my head that you've got to work, you got to have a job, you got to pay the, yada, yada, yada.
Same.
And so one of the biggest regrets I have, and I don't have a lot, is that I didn't take enough time in between my jobs. And, looking back, I'm the type of person that like I want to take the time, but I also like I want it all my way. Right. So ideally I've got like 2 or 3 chunk of time, but then I also have the next thing lined up. So I have the security but life doesn't work that way. Maybe, parts of my life I've been pretty lucky that it all just kind of
Mhm.
clicked. Most of the time not, because I didn't take the time off, right? And so I love to hear that you've taken some time for yourself. And so if you're comfortable sharing, like what's it like out there? How's the job search going? You know, where are you at? How are you feeling about things?
Yeah. So, no offers in hand yet, knock on wood. I think that's wood. Um, but optimistic that a few of the positions I'm currently in play for may end up panning out into something soon. So,
And
but
so
it's
what is your process for figuring out what that next role looks like? If and you know, part of your story, I'm hearing like things just kind of organically happened, and it was like you got the first recruiting gig and it related to an industry, and then your next one was kind of an extension of that, but like the next logical. And so are you at a point now where you know what that next logical move is, or are you really more of like open to kind of seeing what everything that's out there?
yeah. So, I do pretty strongly prefer to stay in the startup world, but I am talking to one former employer, so I won't go into details because never know what's going to happen. But ultimately, because I've been able to build really strong people and talent teams, soup to nuts from the ground up, I've found that when you're working in a startup setting, you've really got like three stages as I see it. You've got your jungle phase, your dirt road, and then your paved road. I don't know if you guys have heard this like metaphor before, but
Can you
on
say that
your
one more time? You said jungle phase,
yeah,
the
so you've got
dirt
your
road.
jungle phase,
Okay.
your dirt road phase, and your paved road stage. And so when you're in the jungle phase, like maybe you're seed funded or series A, like if you're a series A, like you're in the jungle and you at least like have a machete, but when you're seed funded, you're like, cool, well, I have no idea where the path is. I'm just trekking through the jungle right now and hoping I'm going to find some sustenance, right? Like you're figuring out the business. And then by the time you reach your dirt road phase, maybe that's more like series B, series C. Like obviously at that point you've got your minimum viable product, your market fit, and all of that to be, seeing some momentum. But the road's still pretty bumpy. It's got a good number of potholes, much like the Boston roads. Come on, Michelle Wu. But and then finally, as you get into your later stage pre-IPO teams or even post-IPO, you've got, your paved road, you're smooth sailing down the highway, and there might be some accidents on the highway from time to time, but you still know the direction that you're going in as a company. And I find that going from the jungle to dirt road phase is my kind of sweet spot. Like I love to build from nothing and then start to scale. And then I've seen all three phases of jungle, dirt road, paved road, and then that final one being more optimized for what's next, right? Because what works for a 35-person company, which is how big ConnectRN was when I joined, versus an over 300-person company by the time I left, is totally different from a systems and ops perspective.
So it sounds like you're looking for that role where you're going from jungle to dirt road. I'm curious, do you have like a process for even identifying these types of companies? Like, do you have like a dream list of companies that you want to work for, and then you sort of work backwards from there? Or are you going into LinkedIn and using like your LinkedIn ninja skills to put together sales navigator searches? Or maybe you're like going into the job boards, like break down the process, because I'm sure a lot of people are trying to figure out like the best way to tackle this. And I guess there is no best way, but curious how you're going about it.
Yeah. So ultimately, kind of like you just mentioned, you have to have your goal in mind for what is the role that you want next. And also what type of company, what stage, right? Before you start aimlessly applying, because then, what's the point in applying to a role that you're not necessarily really interested in? Because then if they get back to you and somebody was genuinely interested in that role, you're just taking away that interview time and opportunity from somebody who is really interested and could be a good fit. So having that kind of like goal setting experience is important. Naturally, you've got to make sure that your resume and your LinkedIn profiles are working for you and up to date with, your major accomplishments and also what you've been able to achieve in your most recent roles, as opposed to just, oh, well, I entered in this employee into our benefits platform to make sure that they got health insurance, right? Like, instead, maybe talk about how your company was voted best perks and benefits through Comparably, right? So just thinking about ways to optimize, right? And highlight more on the achievement and accomplishment scale. But then you really got to network like it's your job. So as we can all see on LinkedIn right now, especially for fully remote roles, they're getting hundreds upon hundreds of applications to upwards of 1,000 for a single position. It's a needle in a haystack. And even if you do have all of these accomplishments, you're probably still going to get rejected unless you have a contact. And what worked, at least for me, as somebody who quote unquote grew up under the talent acquisition umbrella of the HR spectrum, just being able to send a cold LinkedIn in-mail to a chief people officer or a CEO, a COO, a CFO, whoever is hiring for that role isn't working the way that it used to, because that's what literally everyone is doing right now. So then, instead of relying on what traditionally would have been the way to get in front of folks, you want to lean into your network. So, like I mentioned, one of the companies I'm interviewing with, I used to work for. So, shock, I still know people who are there, right? Another opportunity, because I've been involved in Startup Boston Week for the past 5-ish years. I got introed to a company who won one of their community awards last year, and they're hiring their first people leader. Another company I found through Y Combinator's job page. So to get a little bit more tactical, right, of am I looking on LinkedIn? The answer is yes, right? Have I seen traction from LinkedIn? Of the couple hundred jobs I've put myself in the running for at this point, I think maybe only 2 phone screens have come out of LinkedIn. For the most part, it has not been me applying to a job. It has been me getting my resume in front of someone through either a referral, an external recruiter, or somebody who works within the company who I have maybe a second or third degree connection with that is open to introing me to whoever the hiring manager is. So networking is key.
Wow. Well, you had me at updating your resume and LinkedIn page, and I'm really embarrassed to say this, but I haven't updated my resume in about a decade, if I'm being honest. I launched Workify in 2014. It's 2013. I think I needed to submit my resume for some program that I was being nominated for, but it wasn't like a real update. And so if you are a more experienced or tenured professional, like what advice, like where do you start? Like what is, I don't even know what an appropriate resume looks like these days. Is it 1 page? Is it 2 page? Because I'm so old. Is it like, is it just the most important jobs I've had? Is it every single job going back to, my
That's a
global
great question,
mobility
Steven.
days at Ernst & Young? Like there's so many questions, and I feel like I got a little shame about it. I feel like I should know these answers, but I have no idea. And every time I like think about like, ooh, maybe I should just like knock out some updates to my resume, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing here. So what are your like what advice would you give to people that are in a similar situation on the resume?
Yeah. So for senior executives, it definitely cannot hurt to reach out to executive recruiters. They're almost always willing to have a conversation, even if they don't have the right job today. They're always trying to play the long game, which is very smart of them, right? So even if they don't have something today, doesn't mean that they won't in a few weeks or next week, or maybe it'll take a couple of years for them to be useful to your network. But like, there's always some kind of connection that will yield something eventually. So I wouldn't say I'm a lion, which is a LinkedIn open networker, but I do have 18,000 connections in my LinkedIn network. I like to jokingly say I'm like a D-grade LinkedIn influencer. Like my posts after this. Thanks. I do think that by casting a wide net, I've been able to get those introductions and get that going. And so also, as a people leader, you're probably going to own talent acquisition and more than likely executive recruiting and being involved in hiring your peers across C-suite. So just doing regular cold outreach to CFOs, CTOs, or whether if you're in a nonprofit, like other executive directors. I'm less familiar with the nonprofit world, admittedly. So I'm like, I don't know, executive director, that's a thing, right? But reach out to folks that are in industries that are close enough to yours to where it could be mutually beneficial to be connected to that person in the future. And they might not get back to you, but who cares? There's a whole world of people to connect with. And so it's been very beneficial for me to do just some of that networking. But then also too, it's really, really important to have a community within your own peer group of HR leaders. So one of my friends from, actually not the Boston HR Council, but another one from the Boston HR Council is going to be introing me for a role, but someone from our Boston talent community. We used to get together, and I think you guys had Jen Paxton on here at one
Yeah,
point.
we did.
Yeah.
We did.
Pre-COVID times, we had physical in-person breakfasts. And so one of the friends I made from one of those breakfasts has actually got me in contact with a CEO today. And she's been doing fractional work with them. So she's like, actually, Allison would be really great for this on a full-time basis. So having, that community of peers who can also vouch for you and make those intros too is really important.
So what I'm hearing is it's all about building your network, having a community. So once you
More
have
tactical resume though. I'm realizing I totally just went down the networking rabbit hole like really hard. Can you tell that relationship building is like my thing?
hey,
No,
that's
it
a
makes
great
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
just gonna say it makes me feel better because it's less about the resume and more. If I'm hearing you right, it's more about the
Yeah.
networking and putting
Totally.
yourself in a position where you'll be seen and just naturally vetted and stumble
Yeah.
upon these opportunities. Then seeing my resume and getting it so perfect with the perfect words and the perfect bullets that I think
It's
that's
not to
gonna
say
get
you
me the job.
don't need one entirely though, but if you're looking for a colder intro, it's good to have that to arm that person with to say like, hey, have you met Allison? She's a 2-time startup hypergrowth people and talent leader
Mm,
who's been at companies that have won numerous awards from Forbes and Comparably for having really positive culture and happiest employees. And so being able to arm those folks making the intros
and
makes it that much smoother.
and that was
But
my follow-up question. Like, once you've gotten that warm intro and you're having those initial meetings, like how do you craft like your unique value proposition? Like, how are you positioning yourself as like the right person for the job? And it sounds like you hit on some of those accomplishments. Is there anything else that you do?
yeah, I mean, ultimately past behavior predicts future behavior. Anybody who has ever worked at a company the same as me, they've probably talked to me about interviewing, and I'm a huge fan of behavioral interviewing. I like subscribe to the Bible that is behavioral interviewing. And so past behaviors predict future behaviors. If you forget nothing else and you're doing your own job search, just have specific examples ready for when you're interviewing. But that also goes into your, quote unquote pitch of yourself, right? So just as I need to be able to speak to how I've developed relationships and influenced first-time CEOs, I also need to be able to succinctly, in like a 10-second elevator pitch, say, this is what I do, this is my brand, right? So thinking through those things ahead of time, going back to like that very first step, like with the goal setting, like I mentioned, of figuring out what's the right role, what's the right industry. That's also the time when you want to be thinking about your quote unquote personal elevator pitch. And to Stephen's question of 1 page, 2 page, probably don't want to go beyond 2 pages. If you're under 5 years in your career, you can definitely keep it to 1 page. Beyond that, I would try to succinctly keep it to 2 pages. And you can mention EY or whatever your first job was, right? But maybe make it post-grad jobs if you do have a degree. And you can just remove the bullet points saying what you did in that job, just say company, job title, when you worked there, kind of deal. So I think this was my first time removing the door-to-door sales experience from my resume because it was getting a little bit long, but I did keep my experience as an English teacher, for example, which my executive coach was like, you really don't need that in there if you're going for an HR leadership role. And I said, well, what if I work at an ed tech company that really loves the fact that I have a teacher knowledge certificate from University of Cambridge in the UK, right? Like, so
Love it.
if I know that that's going to be in my job search, I'll include it, right? But you don't have to go into the nitty gritty details necessarily.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for giving us these tips. Thank you for being vulnerable and just sharing where you're at. I know it's hard. It's hard to have these conversations sometimes, and especially on a podcast, right? Where we're gonna thousands of people are gonna be listening to this. But I feel that it's just such a relevant topic today. I can't, similar to Daniel, there's so many people in my life that are open to work and they're looking for the next thing. Some are still in that great resignation, employee burnout mode. Like they didn't make a move during the pandemic and they're like so over it, like, way past the point of being over it. And so now they're like, considering making moves. And, if we wish you the best of luck, if there's anything we can do to help, like outside of just sharing your story, let us know. I want to talk before we wrap up the conversation. I want to talk about hybrid work. And I know we've talked a lot about the, hybrid work. I don't want to steal thunder from a future question, but in fact, we have one of our rapid fire questions now is like future fad. And interestingly enough, one of the responses I think we got on the episode prior to this was a fad was hybrid work. The last guest we had mentioned hybrid work is a fad.
I haven't listened to that episode. I don't know if it's out yet.
And I don't think it is. We have like 12 in the chamber or something crazy like that we haven't even pushed out yet. And so I honestly, I was shocked to hear hybrid work a fad. And so, I think the rationale was, remote is the future, in person is the future. Hybrid itself, like specifically, probably just a fad. And so I'm just curious, there's a lot of pro remote people out there. We've spoken to many of them on the show. And, I know there are nuances like flexibility first and like there are different ways of approaching it. And so let's pretend we're having this debate, right? And, I'm on the fully remote side. What would be your key points for why hybrid is a better alternative?
Yeah. So, and I will say, I do absolutely agree that fully remote companies can work for some cultures, but maybe not all cultures, right? And so I know that, at least from my perspective as somebody who Clifton Strength Finder, woo, it was my third strongest strength. Ugh. Whatever. I'm so very extroverted. So the pandemic and being forced to be fully remote for so long was really incredibly difficult for me and a lot of fellow extroverts out there. But going beyond that, you can really just look at it associated to dollar amounts. And my argument also actually relates to belonging. So when you are in the working world, you want to make sure that you are staying healthy, and mental health is a part of that. But when you are ultimately sick, you're going to either be out of work, you're going to naturally have lower team productivity. If you are still trying to push through, which oftentimes fully remote workers do if they're under the weather, because they're like, oh, well, I don't have to worry about getting my peers sick. Let me just still log on and do this, right? The quality of the work inevitably won't be as high, and you're at higher risk for turnover and burnout. But actually, according to a report that Cigna did on loneliness in the workplace back in 2020, lonely employees cost companies $406 billion per year. I'm going to say that again, because ultimately that is just a stupid amount of money. Lonely employees cost $406 billion per year. And ultimately, Cigna also finds that 61% of Americans are lonely, and 80% of Gen Z and 70% of millennials are lonely. And I don't know about you both, but especially in men, most are not able to say that they have any like best friends. And if they do, it's maybe one, but no more than 5, like really close, genuine friends once they get out of college. So I will pause there. I'm curious to do like an impromptu poll. How many close friends? I'm assuming you're both, beyond college. You're typical like 22-year-old college age at this point, right? How many close friends would you two say you've had?
You want to go first, Steven, or you want me to take it?
No, I want you to take it.
I feel like
wait, and to clarify, because I'm a data guy, right? I ran an
Yeah.
engagement survey company for a long time. So when we say a best friend, this is someone that we actively still stay in touch with, from a
Correct.
previous employer.
No, not from a previous
Or just
employer.
a
It could
current-
be any time in life.
just
Yeah,
any
so
friend.
just like
Yeah.
like a
Any
like a
friend.
best friend, like you shoot the what, maybe you text them stupid memes on a regular, or maybe that's not your thing and you talk sports things. That's not my jam. Or RuPaul's Drag Race, whatever, your life is all
I
about.
need more friends to chat about RuPaul's Drag Race with.
Absolutely.
I'll let Daniel start.
I feel like I might be the exception to this because I have an unusually large friend group. I have like 2 or 3 unusually large friend groups. So I think, I mean, it's hard to like say who I consider a best friend, but I definitely have at least like, 6 or 7 guys that I'm keeping in touch with, like if not on a weekly basis, like a monthly basis. But my wife and the spouses or partners of the friends that I keep in touch with also make the comment that we have like kind of a unique friend group, and the fact that we all stay in touch as much as we do is pretty rare. So I don't know if I'm representative of most men. I'll let Steven go. I don't know what it's like for you.
I'll go. And I'm 46 and Daniel's, I think, 16 years younger than me, 17 years younger than me. So there's a big age difference. And I find, like, now looking back, I can see there are 2 distinct phases of my adulthood. like adult Steven, and there
Mhm.
was the phase, like call it 21 post college to 32, 33 when I had my first child, and then there's 33 to now after I've had children, because life changes so much once you have kids. Your time, you're really constrained for time now. So before it was like, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? Oh, let's go grab a beer. Now it's like, okay, I've got I've got one slot to go to the gym, meet up with someone, do whatever. And I would say now I I don't have a lot of best friends. I think I'm surprised to be answering this way. I've got a
Don't
lot of
worry, we won't
friends.
tell your like just regular friends that they aren't best friend, level.
A couple of them listen to Modern People Leaders, so they'll be like, "What the hell, Steven?" But I think that's a function of like life, running its course and taking everyone in different paths with conflicting priorities. I when I thought the question was about work, I would say, well, that's easier for me because Daniel would be my best friend because Daniel's also my co-founder. And the thing is, like, we worked together before and we were very close, but we weren't as close as we are now. And so there is something, but I think that's also unique because, right, it's different working with someone and being co-founders
And also
together
being family.
and also being family. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are
Yeah.
multiple
Built
dimensions
in
there, but I think you're onto something. I think,
My
today.
brother, like if you asked him that same question, my brother's 33, he'd probably say that he has less than 5 best
Yeah.
friends that he's like
Yeah.
still, in touch with.
And I would say less than 3. There's probably 1 or 2 guys that like I still like actively one-on-one we connect with.
Yeah, and so ultimately it really relates to the loneliness factor, right? But I think it's important to think about hybrid is how we connect, not necessarily where we work. So something that I saw pretty interesting with one of the companies that I'm talking to right now, may have a system of hiring folks remotely, but with the expectation that every 8 weeks, one of those weeks is going to be full-time in person where their
Mm.
headquarters is based. And so I haven't worked in that sort of environment, but they still consider it to be hybrid because for 6 weeks out of the year, they are together, and it's not in like an off-site like vacation style of get together. It's a we're doing our standard workday just physically in person. So they keep their office space for those weeks. And I think that their CEO actually is there full time, but he's local, so he can go in if he wants to. But I think that a lot of hybrid just has to do with trust. And so by providing that trust, you can still lean into that flexibility that everyone craves while still giving the opportunity to provide that reconnection space, right? I don't know how many times I've been like the one employee on the meeting that chose to work from home that day, and not being able to be heard on like a video call is so annoying to me, right? So there are
Yeah.
some like nuances of hybrid that are harder, but I think that by providing clarity to employees of when they're expected to be on site and making sure that time makes sense to actually collaborate together is
Hmm.
what will move the business forward. So that way you're addressing the loneliness factor, you're addressing, the lack of trust from the executive leaders where they're like, "Oh, well, how much work are we actually getting done if everyone's fully remote?" Even though people are obviously able to do that during the pandemic, right? It brings together the best of both worlds, and you're also able to reduce that level of burnout that you often see by, not knowing when to shut off the laptop at the end of a workday when you are fully remote.
So I guess to Steven's point earlier that there are a lot of different definitions of what hybrid even means. And I'm
Mhm.
curious, like to you, like what's your definition of hybrid?
Yeah, so ultimately it can be like the way I think most people envision hybrid of like having a few days a week in office together and then a few days a week remote. But it could also be like that other company that I mentioned where you can be totally like physically distributed across either the country or the world, so
Hmm.
long as you are, committing to getting together on, a fairly regular basis to have those in-person collaboration opportunities. Um, and making sure that you're making use of that time so that way you don't have those who are resentful for not being 100% remote 365 days a year.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. One thing that I guess we've talked about a couple of or a handful of times on the show, and I think Steven refers to it as like the dual labor economy, that there's going to be, some companies that go fully remote. And if that's something that you subscribe to, you're going to want to apply to that kind of company. And then on the other side of the spectrum, there's going to be the fully in person companies. And if going into the office is something that you enjoy, and for some people it is, then they'll opt into that. And I guess what you're saying is like there could be like a third path for people, and that's hybrid. Um, and whether that means going in a couple of days a week or going in once every 8 weeks, like there's kind of people in the middle that do enjoy the flexibility of being able to work from home most of the time, but still crave that in-person interaction. And maybe they are a little bit lonely and they do want to connect with their peers and want to have a deeper connection with the people they work with than the Zoom meetings that they're on with them for 8, 10 hours a week, like almost like having more depth to those relationships. So I guess on that point,
Or
like,
belonging.
yeah, belonging. Yeah, belonging. Um, has there been anything, the last couple of years that you found to be effective in creating those moments where people feel like they belong, or feeling like they're adding more depth to their relationships? I don't know. I feel like this is something that everybody's struggling with, and we've been talking about this for a long time, and nobody seems there is no silver bullet, and people are experimenting. And I'm just curious, like if there's been anything that you've tested out that you're like, oh, this like kind of works, like it's almost there. Like I feel like a few more iterations and we'd be a little bit closer.
I mean, I don't think I've ever heard of anybody disliking free food. So that's a pretty tried and true method. But in the times where you're more in that jungle phase of the startup life cycle and you don't maybe have the cash to be able to bring in food every day or even regularly, um, really helping folks understand, this is the purpose of your role and here's how it fits in to the greater mission, really intrinsically helps to motivate, folks me be going forward. Also being vulnerable from the executive level and highlighting when you are taking PTO to be able to unplug and leave work at work. Um, and also to, I think, being transparent. This would open a whole separate episode for a podcast, transparent about pay, right? Making sure that folks who are in similar or the same roles are being paid similarly, I think really helps to drive that sense of feeling valued and accepted and that sense of belonging to help them be ultimately more engaged and looking to come in and put in the work.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a fascinating thing to see play out. Just looping back, like 5 or 10 minutes, the past 5 or 10 minutes of the conversation. Like I I've compared it to e-commerce, like the e-commerce trend, right? There's some people that only shop online. They're not trying to go to a bricks and mortars. They're not trying, like, they're going to shop online. You buy all the things, you try them on, you send back what you don't like, or you just keep it all. And then there are people that want to go shop in person, like my parents, and they want to spend hours at, a mall or a Home Depot or wherever. And, that's not to say that people that shop, not all people that shop online don't go to a bricks and mortars place, but the vast majority, I feel like, of people nowadays are buying things online, hence Amazon's ridiculous market share and valuation. And so I think it's going to, I still believe, based on everything I'm seeing, that it's still going to be that kind of like market battle. And the only difference here, it's not, it's the actual way we work. It's not the physical product itself or how the product's delivered. And as I heard like the last couple of minutes of what you were saying, Allison, like I can see why there are laggards, right? Like I can see the old school CEO or the old school executive team, and they're like, wait a second, pay transparency. You're telling me, we have to pay everyone the same everywhere? Like, that doesn't even make business sense. Like that's just like a bad business decision. Why would I ever do that? And I don't think I see these conversations on LinkedIn. It's like, why don't you guys see it this way? Why don't you guys see it this way? And it's like, it's not really, we're never going to convince people that it's one way or the other. And I think there are like arguments of both. And so when, as I've seen this kind of play out, I'm like, ooh, where's the popcorn? Because I feel like there are going to be more situations like the CEO that just got recorded saying that caregivers can't be efficient with their time and can't be effective in their jobs. I can't remember the name of the company or the CEO, or I would state this, but it's like, why would you
don't give them
do
that airspace?
Right. Why would you do that? But I think, unfortunately, there's still a large percentage, or I won't say large, there's a material percentage of executives and leaders out there that are still rooted in like the bricks and mortar way.
Yep.
So
all
mic
right.
drop.
Mic drop. I think that's the perfect segue into rapid fire questions. So if you've listened to the show, every episode we ask the same set of questions to every guest. So question 1, how do you define a modern people leader? What are the traits and characteristics?
Yeah, I would say that the modern people leader, first and foremost, needs to be the king, queen, or non-binary royalty of being able to adapt. I think that we learned in the pandemic that nothing about the future of work is certain, and the number of hats that we had to wear during that time and are continuing to have to put on continue to evolve on a daily and weekly basis. So I think that's really the key, is just being incredibly open to change, being hopefully excited about driving change in a positive way, right? Is what I think about when I think of the modern people leader.
Love it. All right. Question 2. If you could go back in time and talk to a 22-year-old Allison, what career advice would you give yourself and why?
I saw this question when she sent it over, and I honestly struggled with it a little bit because I wouldn't change the career decisions that I've made at all. But I guess I would remind myself of my mantra that I always say to my team is control the controllables. So that way I'm not getting quite so intensely worked up when the Beijing government changes their visa regulations and now I have to totally shift my recruiting pipeline, right? So things that are outside of your control are always going to be outside of your control. And so you can control your emotions, you can control your reactions. And so, just be mindful of that, I think has been the biggest piece of advice that I have given to others that would probably be beneficial for 22-year-old Allison.
+1 on that. And that's sort of my philosophy for life. Like, control things that you can control and try not to spend too much time thinking about everything outside of that. All right, so last question, future or fad? So of all the trends that we're hearing about right now, what's the future of work? Like, so what's one thing that's here to stay, and what's just a fad? What's something we're talking about right now that you don't think we'll be talking about in 4 or 5 years?
So something that is here to stay, I believe, is pay transparency. Just talking to a lot of the employment attorneys, and part of what I've used this time for is leveling up my own knowledge and skill set, right? That really appears to be something that's not going away. So if you are a CEO or a CFO who's afraid of sharing that information, you're gonna get uncomfortable real quick. And then I think something that is just a fad is Chat GPT. Maybe this is a really hot take, but there are just some things that you can't take a human out of, right? And so I think that if you're leaning into AI too much on, especially on the recruiting side, you're going to find that a robot can hire a robot, right? So that I will say is probably going to evolve, but we won't see the current AI enduring.
It won't look the same. It won't look the same as Chat
Yes.
GPT. Got it. Got it. Love it. Yeah, that's the generative AI is definitely a spicy topic that people are telling it. We're hearing both future and fads. So
I was at a conference this week, and almost every panel was on generative AI, or at least like referencing it, even if the panel wasn't about that. So it's definitely a hot topic.
Yep.
I'm still undecided. It's like, is this like the metaverse, or is this
Dude,
really gonna be a thing?
I'm not gonna lie. So I upgraded to Chat GPT 4, and so now I'm paying the $20 a month, and I'm like trying to force myself to learn the skill. And I've tried it quite a bit this week, and I just can't get it to work the way that I want it to work. So I'm trying to figure out like the right prompts. Like, I don't know. So I'm kind of with you, Allison, and I think maybe that's because a lot of what you do as a podcast host and basically building a media company, it's like 80% creative and storytelling. And I can't figure out how to use generative AI for that yet, or to help me do what I'm doing better than what I'm doing now.
Oh, and one last hot tip. Don't have Chat GPT write your resume. No one knows you better than you. That's my
Exactly. Yeah.
mic.
You heard it here, folks. Well, we're past that time, Allison. We've enjoyed this chat so much that we kept it rolling. But we have two final questions. Well, one question and then one final tradition.
Sure.
The reason we've been able to have such amazing guests, one of the reasons is the next question. If there's like someone that you admire or you think about a lot, or when you see their LinkedIn post, you're like, damn, this is, some good content. Who's like one or two, individuals in the people space that you think just have to be heard, that we have to bring onto the show next?
I'm not sure if you guys have spoken with Stacy Ritchie yet. She's the VP of people at Eighth Light. And she is just phenomenal and a real shining star, at least within the Boston HR ecosystem for sure, and my own personal board of advisors. So she definitely comes to mind. And then I think that Christina Wong could be interesting to talk to as well. She is a CFO turned CPO and working as a fractional people leader right now. And so she might have a totally different perspective talking about, her time as a fractional leader. I don't know if you guys have had fractional folks on and whatnot to speak to that.
Yeah, we have.
But yeah, I think that they both could be pretty strong guests.
Awesome. Well, the rest of the Boston HR Council and crew have given us great guests to have on, so we'll definitely look into it, and we would be honored to have them. So that gets us to our final tradition on the Modern People Leader. We call it one word, one phrase close. We all respond with a word or a phrase. It doesn't have to be one word. That we want to leave this episode, this amazing conversation with, just a way to reflect and wrap things up. Allison, you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go back to my roots. Past behavior predicts future behavior.
Ooh, love it.
I'll say cathartic. As somebody who was, laid off in November, and I haven't quite jumped into like a job search. I'm really focused on the modern people leader, but still a lot of the stuff that we were talking about, I could really relate to.
I'm going to go with same. I agree with what you just said, Daniel. I'm going to go with don't sweat the resume.
Or let
I'm gonna go.
ChatGPT write it for you.
Or yeah. Love it. Well, guys, what an amazing conversation. What a fun way to end the week. Allison, you're an absolute blast. Thank you for joining us. It was a long time coming, but we finally did it.
2 years in the making.
I know.
Yeah. Well, it was a ton of fun. So thanks again for joining us.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
Have a good weekend. Bye.